My name is Grace Miller, and I'm 38 years old. When I was 17 and pregnant, my parents called me a disgrace and gave me 10 minutes to get out of their house. No money, no hug, no looking back. Last week, those same people walked into the glass lobby of St. Augustine Heart Center, demanding to see their precious grandson, the youngest chief of cardiac surgery in the state. They held their designer coats like armor, dropped their last name like it still meant something, and expected doors to open. What they didn't know was that the woman they once threw away like garbage now controlled exactly how close they would ever get to the grandson they suddenly wanted. And that somewhere in a locked file in my lawyer's office was a video and a single sentence in a will that would rip their entire illusion to pieces. Before I tell you what happened when Karma finally made it to the hospital lobby, I want to ask you something. If you've ever felt abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you most, or if you believe that real family is chosen, not forced, feel free to subscribe and stay a while. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I read those. It reminds me I'm not talking into the dark. Now, let me take you back to the night everything broke. It was October 2003. I was standing in my parents' living room, the one with Italian marble floors, the Steinway piano no one ever played, and the chandelier that cost more than most people's cars, holding a plastic stick in my shaking hand. Positive. Not once, not twice, 3 times. My mother, Victoria, looked at the test like it had personally insulted her. "You're lying," she said first. Her voice didn't rise. It got colder, sharper. No daughter of mine would be this common. My father, Leonard, didn't shout. He never shouted. Shouting was for people with no control. He just walked out of the room. For one absurd second, I thought he was going to get a glass of water, or maybe sit down before we talked about this like adults. Instead, I heard my closet door open down the hall drawers, hangers, zippers. He came back carrying my navy suitcase, the one they bought for college tours. He set it by the front door, perfectly centered handle facing me, like a display. "You have 10 minutes, he said, adjusting his cufflink. "Take what fits." "Dad, You will leave your house key on the table," he continued, like he was reading off a checklist. "You will not contact us again. We will tell people you've gone to an overseas program. Switzerland sounds respectable." My throat closed. "Please," I whispered, turning to my mother. "Mom, I'm scared. She didn't look at me. She studied her manicure instead. "You made your choice, Grace," she said. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. We have a reputation to protect." Their reputation, their friends, their image, their Miller and Company Holdings name that was printed on donation plaques across the city. The baby's father, Tyler, had already made his choice. His parents had lawyers. His acceptance letter from Stanford sat framed on their mantel. When I told him I was pregnant, he blocked my number before I got home. I picked up the suitcase because my legs were shaking too badly to stand still. In my bedroom, my debate trophies were lined up on the shelf. My acceptance letters were pinned to the corkboard. My cap and gown for winter graduation hung in the closet. 10 minutes to erase 17 years, I threw in jeans, t-shirts, underwear, my old hoodie, the envelope of babysitting cash I'd hidden in my jewelry box, $214 and some change. At the last second, I grabbed the locket my grandmother had given me before she died. They'd forgotten it existed. When I came back to the living room, my father had flipped the family photo on the mantel face down. All 3 Millers, matching white shirts and stiff smiles, now staring into the marble. "Leave the key," he repeated. I set it on the hall table. It sounded loud when it hit the wood. Final. "Dad, please." "You are not our daughter anymore," he said. My mother checked the time on her watch. "Taxi will be here in 5, she said. "You can have the station or the bus depot. Those are your options." They didn't follow me outside. The door closed with a soft click behind me. It sounded exactly like a judge dropping a gavel. I slept in a bus station the first night, on a bench in Riverside Park the second. By the third night, I had learned how to curl myself around my suitcase so no one could pull it away. It was cold. That kind of damp city cold that seeps into your bones and makes your teeth ache. I pressed a hand to my stomach and tried to imagine a future where I wasn't this tired and this hungry and this alone. I woke up to a soft voice. "Sweetheart, you're going to freeze to death out here." I startled awake, heart racing. Not a cop, not a drunk man. An older woman in a long camel coat and a knitted beret, her gray hair tucked underneath next to her. A small terrier in a ridiculous plaid sweater sniffed my sneakers. "I'm fine," I lied. My lips were numb. "Just resting." She studied my face with those sharp, assessing eyes older women get when they've seen too much. Then her gaze dropped to my hand, where I was unconsciously holding my stomach. "How far along?" she asked gently. I cracked, not with a tear, but with a flood ugly, shaking sobs that made my ribs hurt, the kind of crying you only do when there's finally one human being who doesn't look away. "There now," she murmured, sitting right down on that cold bench with me like it was a sofa in a living room. "I've cried enough on cold benches to recognize the sound. My name is Eleanor. That's Bruno." She nodded toward the dog. "You're coming with us." "I can't," I stammered. "I don't have money. You have a child to protect," she said. "That's all the currency that matters right now. Come on." Her car smelled like lavender and leather and old perfume. My fingers tingled as the heater blasted. She drove me to a house on the west side that looked like it should have had its own postcode high ceilings. Big windows, the kind of front door you only see in magazines. 8 bedrooms, she said, seeing my face. 1 widow, 1 small dog, and now 1 frozen teenage girl who doesn't belong on a park bench. Inside, she opened a door at the end of the hall. I thought my heart might stop. It was a nursery, not quite finished, but close. Soft yellow walls, a crib, a rocking chair, a mobile with little paper stars. On the dresser was a framed photo of a young woman with Eleanor's eyes. She was pregnant. She was laughing. "This was my daughter's room," Eleanor said quietly. "She died in a car accident 6 years ago. She was 7 months along." I swallowed. "I couldn't save her," she said, "but I made myself a promise. If the universe ever dropped another scared pregnant girl into my path, I wouldn't walk past her." She turned to me. "So, Grace," she said, like we'd known each other for years instead of 10 minutes. "The closet has maternity clothes. The bathroom is through there. The bed is yours. No questions, no conditions, just one rule." I braced myself. "You do not apologize for needing help," she said. "Do we understand each other?" For the first time in 3 days, I nodded without choking. That night, I slept in a soft bed while Bruno snored at my feet, and a stranger who felt like the safest person in the world walked down the hall every hour to check if I needed water. The baby kicked for the first time 2 weeks later. I grabbed Eleanor's hand and pressed it to my belly. "There," I said. "Feel that?" She smiled, eyes bright. "That," she said, "is the sound of a second chance." My son was born on a Monday in February during an ice storm that shut down half the city. The paramedics barely made it up the icy driveway. The hospital generator failed for 10 minutes mid-labor. I remember dim emergency lights, the metallic smell of fear, and Eleanor's voice in my ear. "Breathe, Grace. Look at me, not at the machines. You've got this." It was the first time anyone had ever looked at me like I was capable of surviving my own life. He came into the world screaming, pink and furious and perfect. The nurse wrapped him and placed him on my chest. His eyes opened, dark and alert, scanning everything like he was already taking notes. "Hi," I whispered. "I'm your mom. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but we're going to figure it out." Eleanor cut the cord. "I'm officially your backup," she told him. "Every hero needs one. We named him Adrian." "Strong name," Eleanor said. He'll grow into it. She wasn't wrong. Adrian walked at 10 months, climbed everything he could reach by 2, and started reading menus to me by 3. Eleanor used to say he didn't learn language. He hunted it down. While he absorbed the world like a sponge, I tried to patch together a future Eleanor owned 2 neighborhood cafes and a small but wildly popular bistro that people on food blogs posted about like it was a pilgrimage. "You can wipe tables and pour coffee," she said when I tried to insist on paying rent. "And in between, you're going to learn how this runs bank deposits, schedule, vendors, taxes, all the things no one thinks about when they talk about following your passion." She stood me behind the counter and showed me how to count a till. "You're not prettying up lattes," she said. "You're learning how to run a business so no one can ever throw you away again." I got my GED at 20, took community college classes at night, started reading her old accounting books during Adrian's nap times. When he was 7, Adrian performed surgery on his stuffed rabbit Sirius face, plastic scissors, white yarn stitches from Eleanor's knitting basket. "What are you doing, Bug?" I asked. "Fixing it," he said. "He's hurt." He'd drawn a heart on the rabbit's chest in red marker. At 10, he was reading my human biology textbooks. At 12, he asked me if it was normal to dream in diagrams. "I see systems when I close my eyes," he said, "like how things connect." I didn't know then that he meant arteries. "Whatever that means," Eleanor said, overhearing. "It sounds like brilliance to me." At 16, Adrian got into an early medical track program at a state university. We cried so hard over the acceptance letter that he had to iron it before he framed it. At 28, the local paper ran a headline, "Dr. Adrian Miller named youngest chief of cardiac surgery at St. Augustine Heart Center." The article mentioned every achievement, the research, the awards, the innovative pediatric procedures. It barely mentioned me. That was fine. I knew where he started. It did mention his full legal name, Dr. Adrian Elias Miller Price. He'd asked to add Price when he was 18, as a surprise for Eleanor. "You're as much my grandmother as anyone could be," he told her. "I want people to know that." My parents must have choked on their coffee when they saw that hyphen. Price. The name that would haunt them in more ways than one. The email came 3 days after the article. Not to my personal account, of course. They didn't have that. They sent it to the generic contact form for our new nonprofit, the Second Table Foundation. The organization I'd started with Eleanor's help to provide free meals and job training to single parents. Subject line, request for contact, Family Matter. The sender, leonard.miller@millerholdings.com. My hand actually shook picking up the mouse. I clicked. "Dear Grace, we hope this message finds you well. Recent public news concerning Dr. Adrian Miller Price has come to our attention. We were pleased and unsurprised to learn of his remarkable success. As his grandparents, we feel it is appropriate and long overdue that we reconnect. We would like to discuss a family reconciliation and establish a relationship with our grandson. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Leonard and Victoria Miller." They signed it with their corporate titles, not Mom and Dad. My chest tightened, not with grief, with rage so clean it felt like ice. They had never met my son, never bought a single diaper, never called to ask if I had food or heat or enough money for the OB appointment. But the moment his title showed up next to a hospital logo, suddenly he was their grandson. I forwarded the email to my husband, Noah. He came into the office a few minutes later and found me standing at the window, unreadable. "They saw the article?" he asked. "Apparently it traveled all the way up to their marble tower," I said. "They feel it's appropriate to reconnect." "Do you want to?" he asked quietly. I laughed. It sounded a little too sharp. "What I want is illegal in most countries," I said. "What I'm going to do is talk to Mara." Mara was our attorney, the same estate lawyer who had handled Eleanor's affairs when she passed 3 years earlier and who had the patience of a saint and the aggression of a small, well-dressed dragon in court. "Forward it," Noah said, and remember what Eleanor used to say. I didn't have to ask which line he meant. When people show you who they are, I recited softly, you are allowed to believe them. My parents didn't stop at an email. They booked a table at Eleanor's old bistro, the one I now owned, under a fake name. But there aren't a lot of people in their 60s in this city wearing custom suits. At lunch on a Tuesday, I recognized my mother's posture before I saw her face. I walked up with the practiced smile I give to strangers. "Good afternoon, I'm Grace," I said. "I'll be taking care of you today." "Don't do that," my mother said. "Don't pretend you don't know us." "Ma'am," I said, my voice steady, "if you're about to complain about the menu, customer service is at the host stand. If you're about to talk about things from 20 years ago, that department is closed." My father closed the leather menu like he was tired of a game. "This is childish," he said. "We simply want to talk about Adrian." "You had your chance to talk about him before he was born," I said. "You chose not to." "We were overwhelmed," my mother said. 17, pregnant, it's not what we envisioned for our daughter. People were watching. We panicked. "I slept in a bus station," I said, then on a park bench, while I was throwing up from morning sickness. "You didn't panic. You made a decision." "You've made your point," my father said. "Now we would like to make ours. The boy is a Miller. He has a right to know his heritage, our name, our legacy, what we can do for him." I looked at the logo on his cufflink, the same logo that used to be on my school notebooks. "You signed a piece of paper saying you wanted nothing to do with any child of mine," I said. "Does that ring a bell?" My father's jaw flexed. My mother's hand tightened on the edge of the table. "Old paperwork," he said. "Those things can be revisited. We've talked to counsel." "Good," I said. "So have we." They didn't pay the bill. They left cash on the table and walked out like they were the wronged party. I boxed up their untouched desserts and gave them to the kitchen staff. "On the house," I said. "I just lost my appetite." They escalated from there. A limited edition watch arrived at the hospital addressed to Adrian, then a fountain pen with his initials engraved, then a first edition of some rare medical text. Each card was signed, "From your grandparents, who love you." Adrian brought the first few gifts home, confused. "I don't understand," he said, holding the watch like it was radioactive. "Who sends this kind of thing to someone they've never met? My grandparents are dead." I took the box from his hands and put it on the table. "There's something we haven't told you," I said. Noah squeezed my knee under the table. "But first," I added, "answer one question for me. Do you want to know who they are?" He thought about it longer than most people would have. "I want the truth," he said finally, "whether I like it or not." So I told him about the suitcase, the 10 minutes, the park bench, Eleanor. He sat very still, his surgeon face, hands folded, eyes focused, absorbing data. "So they didn't just distance themselves," he said slowly. "They threw you out while you were pregnant with me." "Yes. And they signed legal documents," he continued, cutting all ties. "Yes." He looked down at the watch again. Then he slipped it back into the box. "Then they're not grandparents," he said. "They're two strangers with my eye color and your bone structure." He carried the gifts to the trash chute himself. "Next time they send something," he said, "you can return to sender or give it to the cleaning staff. They're the ones actually helping people." He smiled a little, then, "It hurt my chest. And if they ever approach you in person," I said, "you call security first and me second." "I'll call security and have them call you," he corrected. "You raised me to be efficient. If this is where you're thinking, okay, they'll give up now. You don't know people like my parents. They didn't stop. They changed tactics." A carefully worded letter appeared addressed to Adrian, CCing the hospital board. They introduced themselves as philanthropists Leonard and Victoria Miller, deeply proud grandparents of Dr. Adrian Miller Price, requesting to explore opportunities for joint charitable initiatives. That phrase, joint charitable initiatives, was doing more heavy lifting than a construction crane. Do they seriously think they can sneak in sideways through a fundraising committee? I asked, shoving the letter across Noah's desk. They don't think, Noah said. They calculate. My phone buzzed that night at 1:37 a.m., unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Old me would have answered new me had learned. In the morning, I listened. Grace, it's Tyler, the voice said. I had to sit down. I hadn't heard his voice in 21 years. It sounded older, thinner, less sure of itself. I saw the news about Adrian, he continued. Wow, he's incredible. Look, I know I don't have any right to ask for anything, but I just want to talk. He's my son, too. My hand clenched around the phone. Tyler had not been there for bruised ribs from a flu-induced coughing fit. He'd not been there for late-night fevers or spelling tests or first days of school. He had not been there to sit in a waiting room while Adrian's first patient was wheeled into surgery. He doesn't know you exist, I said when I called him back. And right now, I'd like to keep it that way. That's not fair, he said. I was 17. My parents threatened to cut me off. I was scared. You were scared, I repeated. I was homeless. Silence. I'm divorced now, he said. The business failed. I'm not in a great place, Grace. Your parents reached out. Of course they did, I said. Let me guess. They're offering to help if you convince me to open the door. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Here's what you can tell them, I said. If they want to feel like they did something for Adrian, they can donate anonymously to our foundation. Otherwise, they can enjoy the life they chose when they locked their front door. I hung up. Then I sent the call log and a summary to Mara. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Good, she wrote. Now we can stop playing defense. The day my parents walked into St. Augustine Heart Center, I was there because I'd brought Adrian a fresh shirt he'd spilled coffee on himself between surgeries and texted me a sheepish, ignorant of laundry, send help. I was in the lobby when the sliding doors opened. Even if I hadn't recognized their faces, I would have recognized the posture. Entitled people have a way of walking into public spaces like everything they see belongs to them. My mother's coat probably cost more than my first car. My father's watch flashed under the bright lights. They went straight to the front desk as if they'd practiced this. We're here to see our grandson, Dr. Miller Price, my mother announced, making sure everyone in a 10-meter radius heard. We're his grandparents, Leonard and Victoria Miller. The receptionist glanced at the schedule, then at them. I'm sorry, she said politely. Dr. Miller Price is in surgery. We'll wait, my father said, planting himself near the leather chairs like a king taking a throne. Please inform him that his family is here. I can't interrupt a procedure, she said. He's in a sterile environment. Do you know who we are? My mother demanded. Here it comes. We donate millions to hospitals, my father added. Miller and Company sponsored your last equipment upgrade. Our grandson is your star surgeon. This is disgraceful. People had started to whisper. Phones appeared. Someone was definitely recording. I walked up next to the security guard who had turned to see the commotion. Mrs. Miller, I said, keeping my voice calm. This isn't your living room. There are patients here. You need to lower your voice. Her head snapped toward me. You, she breathed. You look terrible. I look like I slept last night, I said. You should try it. I looked at security. These people are harassing staff. They need to leave. We're not leaving without seeing Adrian, my father said. We have rights. He's our grandson. The elevator dinged. The operating room doors opened. Adrian came out still in scrubs, hair under a cap, mask dangling around his neck, eyes tired but focused. 2 nurses flanked the gurney carrying a tiny patient to recovery. He took in the scene in one glance. Strangers in designer clothes, phones, security, me. Mom, he said. These are the people who've been sending gifts and emails, I said. He nodded once. I want them removed, he said to security. His voice was steady. Now, there are patients here who need quiet. Adrian, my mother gasped, we're your grandparents. Sweetheart, you look just like your grandfather when he graduated from... He didn't even look at her. "Officer," he said, "if they refuse to leave, I want to press charges for harassment and trespassing." That, more than anything, stunned them. "You're being cruel," my father sputtered. "We made a mistake 20 years ago. We were scared." "You signed a document," Adrian said, turning his gaze on him for the first time. "I've read it. It says I don't exist to you. I'm respecting your wishes." Security escorted them out, but of course that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. They did what people like them always do when they don't get what they want quietly. They went public. 2 days later, Channel 4 ran a teaser. Estranged grandparents claim successful young heart surgeon has erased them. Is cancel culture coming for family ties? My stomach turned. I knew that anchor. She loved a good, messy family story. They interviewed my parents on the steps of their country club. My mother wore pearls and a tasteful black dress, the picture of dignified distress. 20 years ago, we mishandled things, she told the camera, eyes glossy but dry. Our teenage daughter got into trouble. We said things we regret, but we've been trying to reconnect. We've sent gifts, letters. We've offered support. We just want a chance to know our only grandchild. Dr. Miller Price, the reporter said, is a medical star. You must be proud. Incredibly proud, my father said, shoulders back. The Miller work ethic runs deep. It's in his blood. The same blood they'd written off as an inconvenience. What would you say to your daughter if she's watching? The reporter asked. My mother looked straight into the camera. Grace, she said softly, we forgive you. Please don't punish Adrian for our mistakes. They forgave me. I almost threw the remote at the TV. The clip hit 100,000 views on Facebook before dinner. Comments poured in. Let them see their grandson. 20 years is enough, Grace. Parents make mistakes. Kids should forgive. People always have opinions when the pain isn't theirs. Noah closed the laptop. They just made a mistake, he said. What, going public? I asked. Worse, he said. They admitted wrongdoing, on record, on video, without knowing what's sitting in Mara's file. I called Mara. Is this enough? I asked. Can we stop them? We can do better than stop them, she said. We can end this. How? Do you remember Eleanor's video? She asked. My chest tightened. I thought that was just for Adrian, I said. Oh, Grace, she said. Eleanor didn't record just one. Eleanor had always been vague about her money. It's there, she'd say, waving a hand. It goes where it needs to when I'm gone. You don't need to worry about it until then. When she died, we learned what there meant. 2 cafes, the bistro, her house, investments in tech, healthcare, and real estate that had quietly quadrupled over 20 years. $15 million, all tucked neatly into trusts and foundations, with one common condition. It was ours, as long as we never let the people who abandoned us touch a cent. There's a clause, Mara had explained back then. If any biological relatives who rejected you or Adrian try to show up after you become successful or notable, they're permanently barred from any claim on her estate. Did she really word it like that? I'd asked, half laughing, half crying. She used stronger language, Mara had said. I'm sanitizing. She'd also recorded a message. The first video was just for us, Eleanor, thinner but still sharp-eyed, in her favorite sweater, talking about recipes and grief and how proud she was of the life we'd built. The second video, Mara had told me, was for later. Later, apparently, had arrived. Here's the plan, Mara said now. You say nothing publicly. Neither does Adrian. We invite your parents to the hospital's annual heart gala. We frame it as an inheritance discussion related to the Price estate. We invite Tyler, too. Why, I asked, stomach twisting at the thought. Because people like your parents only understand 3 things, she said. Money, reputation, and control. We're going to remove all 3 at once, in a room with cameras. That's brutal, I said. It's factual, she said. They created the facts. We're just arranging the lighting. The St. Augustine Heart Gala is the event in this city. 400 donors in gowns and tuxedos, string quartet, silent auction, enough sparkling wine to drown a small town. Adrian was scheduled to give the keynote about legacy and the future of cardiac care. We drafted new opening lines. I hand-wrote 3 invitations. The first to my parents, "Dear Mother and Father, there is a matter concerning the estate of the late Eleanor Price, which affects Adrian and myself. Formal documentation will be presented at the Heart Gala at St. Augustine next month. It would be appropriate for you to attend. Grace." The second to Tyler. "Tyler, there are legal questions about your parental status and Adrian's patrimony that will be addressed at the St. Augustine Heart Gala. It's in your best interest to be there." Grace, the third, stayed in Mara's file. It was to the judge, requesting emergency restraining orders, already drafted and ready to be filed if things went a certain way. My parents RSVP'd within an hour. Yes, of course, delighted. Tyler wrote back, "I'll be there." No apologies, no questions, just that. "Good," Mara said when I forwarded the confirmations. "Let them all dress up for their own execution." The night of the gala, I wore a dress Eleanor had bought me years earlier and told me to save for a night when you finally understand how much you've survived. Adrian refused to wear a tux. "I'm a doctor," he said, "not a hedge fund manager." He compromised with a dark suit and his white coat slung over his arm. We reserved table 3 for us. Table 1, right in front of the stage, we reserved for special guests. The nameplates read, "Miller Miller." Brooks. When my parents walked in, heads turned. People recognized them from the news clip. Victoria Miller, still magazine ready. Leonard still carrying himself like he owned whatever room he entered. Tyler looked smaller than I remembered. Failure softened him in ways privilege never had. They all saw us. They all saw the table assignments. My mother's eyes gleamed. "They think they're here to collect?" Noah murmured. "Let them," I said. "The debt is just not what they think it is." The lights dimmed. The MC finished her warm, generic introduction. "Please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Adrian Miller Price." My son walked to the podium to polite applause that swelled into something bigger when people realized who he was. "Good evening," he said, voice steady. "Thank you for supporting the work we do here. Tonight, I was asked to speak about legacy. I want to talk about a different kind of legacy than you're used to hearing about at events like this." Behind him, the screens flashed photos, not of donor plaques, but of teen mothers holding babies, of young doctors in training rooms, of group dinners at Eleanor's table. 20 years ago, Adrian continued, a 17-year-old girl was given 10 minutes to leave her parents' house. She was pregnant. She was scared. She ended up sleeping in a bus station and a park. The room shifted. People glanced at each other. "That girl," he said, "is my mother." My parents froze. Her parents decided that their reputation mattered more than their daughter's life, Adrian continued. They signed a document relinquishing all legal and emotional responsibility for her, and any children born or unborn. That's a quote. The screens showed a blurred image of the document, names obscured. Signatures not. "They thought they were signing away a problem," Adrian said. "What they actually signed away was their future, and mine." He pressed a button. Eleanor's face appeared on the screens. She was in her favorite striped sweater, hair pulled back, eyes clear. The audience quieted. "If you're seeing this," she said, "then the people who threw my girl away have finally crawled back into the light." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, you two," she said. "Yes, I know exactly who you are. I hired someone to check." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "You gave your pregnant daughter 10 minutes to pack 10, Eleanor said. "You signed a paper saying anything that came from her body was no concern of yours. You turned her photo face down and went on with your lives." She looked straight into the camera. And straight, it felt, into my parents' souls. "I found her in a park," she said. I gave her a room, a bed, a chance. I held your grandson before you even knew he had a heartbeat. I went to his school plays. I stitched his Halloween costumes. I watched him read surgical textbooks at 10. I drove him to interviews when he started saving lives. Her voice softened. He is mine, she said. Not because of blood, because I showed up. The room was so quiet you could hear glass settle on linen. And you, she continued, you decided money and image were more important than a child. So I decided something too. I decided that none of what I leave behind will ever touch your hands. On the screen, Mara stepped into frame next to Eleanor and held up a legal document. I, Eleanor May Price, Eleanor read, hereby leave all my assets, financial, real estate, business holdings, to my daughter, by choice, Grace Miller, and my grandson, Dr. Adrian Miller Price. Any biological relatives of Grace who previously abandoned, disowned, or rejected her or her child are permanently barred from inheriting, controlling, or benefiting from any portion of my estate. She smiled again. This time it was real. Grace, she said, eyes softening, if they're in the room, you listen to me. You owe them nothing. Not forgiveness, not access. Not a seat at any table you build. If you want to give second chances, give them to girls like you, not to people who threw away their first one. The video faded. Adrian stepped back to the mic. Eleanor Price left us cafes, properties, and investments worth over $15 million, he said. Tonight, we're announcing that a large part of that is funding the Price Center for Young Families. Housing, childcare, scholarships, and medical support for young parents who don't have anyone to catch them. Applause started. Tentative at first, then stronger. My mother shot to her feet. This is insane, she said, voice shrill. You can't just cut out your family like this. We made a mistake. We were young. We regret it. Ms. Miller, the MC said cautiously, if you'd like to speak, we are his grandparents. My father shouted, standing now too. That woman manipulated you. We have rights. The room turned toward them. Cameras lifted. Phone screens glowed. Mara stood up from our table holding a folder. Actually, she said, walking toward the stage, you don't. She climbed the steps and joined Adrian on stage. These are the original documents you signed 20 years ago, she said, her voice amplified now. They are legally binding and were never revoked. She held a copy up to the screen camera. This time, the names and signatures were not blurred. Leonard Miller, Victoria Miller, October 14th, 2003. We hereby relinquish all parental rights and responsibilities for our minor child, Grace Miller, and any children born or unborn in perpetuity. Mara read. We acknowledge no financial, emotional, or legal obligations. Gasps rippled through the room. You knew exactly what you were signing, she said. You both have degrees. You both have lawyers. You cannot claim ignorance now because your abandoned grandchild became something you want to brag about. Tyler half stood, clearly desperate to disappear. And you, Mara said, turning slightly. Mr. Brooks, sit. He sank back down. We have emails, Mara continued, where you agreed to help the Millers reel Grace in exchange for money, where you referred to Adrian as an asset we can leverage. Shall I read those too? Tyler shook his head, face gray. Please don't, he muttered. It's too late for please, Mara said. You had 20 years. The MC looked like she might faint. Jennifer from Channel 4 was in the back, eyes wide, hand already on her producer's arm. Now, Mara said, her tone shifting, you might be wondering what happens next. She glanced at the ballroom doors. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, along with a court clerk holding a stack of papers. These are emergency restraining orders, Mara said. Granted this afternoon by Judge Alvarez, effective immediately. The clerk handed 1 packet to my mother, 1 to my father, 1 to Tyler. You are barred from contacting Grace, Adrian, or any member of their household, Mara said. No calls, no letters, no anonymous gifts, no third-party messages. You may not come within 300 yards of their home, workplaces, or the Price Center. This is a setup, my father spat. All of this. You manipulated the system. You filed first, Mara said. You went to the news. You put this in the public sphere. We're just telling the part you left out. My mother clutched the restraining order like it was going to bite her. You'll regret this, she hissed at me, her eyes wild. When we're dead and gone, and you realize you threw away your parents. I stood. No, I said. You threw away your daughter in a marble foyer 20 years ago. I just finally stopped standing outside the door waiting to be let back in. The officers stepped closer. Ma'am, one of them said, addressing my mother, I'm going to ask you to leave now. If you stay, you'll be in violation of a court order. That's arrestable. They left, not in handcuffs, not dragged, just smaller, less certain. The cameras caught the exact moment my father's mask cracked, the exact second my mother realized that if she cried now, no one would look at her with sympathy anymore. Tyler followed, head down. Adrian watched them go, expression unreadable. Then he turned back to the microphone. Now that that's done, he said, can I tell you about the first girl the Price Center is going to help? The room exhaled. People sat back down. Morbid curiosity shifted into something else. Her name was Jasmine, 17, living in her car, 8 weeks pregnant. She came into our ER last week, Adrian said. Dehydrated, scared, no one to call. I saw myself in her medical chart. Not because I've ever been pregnant, but because I knew the kid she's carrying could become anything if someone would just show up for them. He nodded toward the back. Jasmine stood there, in a simple dress that we'd helped her pick out, one hand on her chest, the other on the small swell of her stomach. We offered her a room at the center, I said into the second mic, my voice thick. Health care, child care, a path to nursing school if that's what she wants. She cried so hard she couldn't sign the papers at first. I recognized that kind of crying. Legacy, Adrian said, is not about whose name is on the building. It's about who walks through its doors and leaves different. The standing ovation this time wasn't for Eleanor's money. It was for every 19-year-old scared girl and every baby who would never see the inside of a bus station at midnight. For a brief second, as people applauded, I looked at the empty chairs at table 1. I didn't feel triumph. Not really. I felt something quieter, relief. If this were a movie, this might be the end. The bad people exposed, the good people cheered, fade to black. Real life is messier. 3 weeks later, Noah sat at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone. You need to see this, he said. He turned the screen toward me. A business headline. Miller and Company founder steps down amid ethics scandal. The article explained that the board had requested my father's resignation after reputational damage from recent revelations. Investors had pulled back, the stock had dipped. The church where they'd been elders issued a bland statement about needing time to heal. My parents sold the big house, bought a condo out of state. Tyler pled guilty to financial crimes entirely unrelated to us and got 18 months. Adrian went back to doing what he did best, opening people's chests and mending what was broken. Life moved on. Then, one quiet Tuesday night, the twist happened. Not the twist where they died and left us surprise money. That's not this story. The twist where someone did something I truly didn't see coming. It was almost closing time at the Price Center. I was in my office going through a stack of intake forms when one of our night staff, Rhonda, knocked. Got a weird one, she said. Thought you might want to handle it. She handed me an envelope, no return address. My name handwritten on the front in a shaky, unfamiliar script. There was a check inside. Cashier's check. $50,000. No note, no explanation. On the memo line, one word, sorry. My first instinct was suspicion. Money doesn't fall out of the sky. I called Mara, gave her the bank info from the check, and asked her to trace it. 2 days later, she called back. "You're not going to like this," she said. "It's from them?" I guessed. "Not them," she said. "One of them." She gave me the name. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't my father. It was Tyler. "He wired the money from an account his lawyer set up after the bankruptcy case," Mara said. "Completely clean. No strings in the paperwork. He really did mark it as anonymous to the bank. He didn't know we'd trace it." I sat down. I wanted to be furious. The part of me that slept in a park wanted to drag the check through the mud and mail him back the shreds. Instead, I thought about something Eleanor had said once when we watched some cheesy TV drama. "Not everyone deserves a second chance," she'd said, "but some people deserve a chance to be a little less awful than they were yesterday." I took the check to Adrian that night. "This is from him," I said. He stared at it for a long time. "Do you want me to tear it up?" I asked. He folded the check once, then again, then set it on the table. "No," he said. "I want it to pay for ultrasound appointments and bus passes and baby clothes. If he wants to do one decent thing with the mess he made of his life, let it be that." "You don't want to talk to him?" I asked. Adrian shook his head. "I know what he looks like," he said. "I know what he did. I have a father who showed up. That check doesn't buy a single conversation. We cashed it. Every cent went into the Emergency Needs Fund, the one staff use when a young parent shows up with nothing but a backpack and a baby. That was the twist, not some dramatic deathbed apology, not a sudden rewriting of history, just money quietly sent by a man who finally seemed to understand that his only role in Adrian's story now was to help strangers who would never know his name. My parents never sent anything. No checks, no letters, nothing. Sometimes the most shocking ending is not the dramatic apology, but the silence that follows when people realize there's nothing left they can bargain with. 6 months later, Adrian and I stood in front of a wall in the Price Center lobby. On it were 3 framed photos. The first was of Eleanor, flour on her cheek, laughing in her kitchen. The second was of Adrian in scrubs, holding a bundled newborn whose mother was too tired to pose. The third was of a group of young women at our first graduation ceremony. High school diplomas and toddlers on their hips. "Do you ever think about them?" Adrian asked quietly, nodding toward the space where my parents' photo might have hung in some other universe. "Less than I used to," I said. "More than I want to." "Do you regret any of it?" he asked. I thought about the park bench, the bus station, the marble foyer, the gala, the $50,000 anonymous check, and about Eleanor sitting on that same park bench, deciding that a stranger's kid was her business after all. "No," I said finally. "I regret what they did. I regret how long I believed it was my fault. But I don't regret choosing this life instead of crawling back for their approval." He slipped an arm around my shoulders. "You know," he said, "I realized something in the OR the other day." "What's that?" I asked. "We always talk about blood," he said. "Blood relatives, bloodlines. But when someone's heart is failing and you've got your hand on it, it doesn't matter whose DNA they carry. It just matters that you hold on until it beats on its own." I looked at the photos, at the busy hallway behind us, full of tiny shoes and tired eyes and laughter and crying and life. "If you've built something with your bare hands," I said softly, mostly to myself, but also to anyone listening, "you're allowed to decide who gets to sit at the table. Even if the people standing outside share your last name. If you stayed with me this far, thank you. If you've ever had to choose between blood and peace, or if you're still in that place where you're wondering if it's okay to walk away from people who keep hurting you. I want you to hear this from someone who's been the scared 17-year-old on the bench. You're allowed to choose the family that chooses you back. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you're comfortable, tell me one person in your life who showed up when they didn't have to. Subscribe if you want more stories about people who refuse to stay where they were thrown. This is Grace, and I'm here to tell you. Being written off doesn't mean your story is over. Sometimes it's exactly where it starts.